In 1945, the Second World War ended. It has only been a few decades, and many veterans who participated in World War II are still alive. However, nowadays, the history of World War II in the large and small media, and even in some textbooks, is already unsightly. For example, the United Kingdom and the United States, especially the United States, became the mainstay of World War II and the savior of the world. The Normandy landing became the main battlefield of the European battlefield. Before that, the North African battlefield and the air battle over England were the main battlefield of the European battlefield. The battle for islands between the United States and Japan in the Pacific Ocean has become the main battlefield in the Asian battlefield. What's more, the Great Escape from Dunkirk became the Great Retreat of Dunkirk, and became an epic victory, a typical funeral turned into a happy event. 1. During World War II, the total number of German troops wiped out was about 5 million. So, who eliminated them? In Europe, World War II broke out on September 3, 1939. Let's first list the major events in Europe before the German army attacked the Soviet Union. 1939. September 1, Germany invades Poland. September 3, Britain and France declare war on Germany. September 5, US government statement, remain neutral. This year, the British and French troops guarded the Maginot Line and innovatively used songs, dances, and ditties to fight against Germany. Poland, which formed a military alliance with Britain and France, was easily captured by Germany. 1940. April 9, Germany invades Norway and Denmark. Denmark surrenders immediately. On May 10, the German army invaded France, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg surrendered immediately. On May 14, the Dutch army surrendered, and the Queen fled to England fearlessly. From May 26 to June 3, the British and French troops saw that the German army was coming for real, so they acted decisively and carried out the Dunkirk escape bravely and wisely. Some American and British movies in recent years have fully demonstrated the fearless escape spirit of the British and French troops during the Dunkirk escape. On May 28, the King of Belgium announced, the whole country surrendered. On June 10, the German army occupied Norway, and the King of Norway resisted overseas. Italy declared war on Britain and France. June 14, German troops enter Paris whistling. On June 18, French General Charles de Gaulle, overseas, organized the War of Resistance and launched the Free French movement. On June 22, France and Germany signed an armistice agreement between Caen and Vienne, and France surrendered. October 12, German troops invade Romania. 1941. February 9, Germany annexes Luxembourg. On April 6, Germany and Italy simultaneously attacked Yugoslavia and Greece. April 17, Yugoslavia surrenders. April 21, the entire Greek army surrenders. On May 30, the German army occupied Crete, and the King of Greece fled heroically to London. It turned out that the German army took over the above-mentioned Western powers peacefully. The German army has achieved a brilliant record of almost unifying Europe. However, the vast majority of the German army did not get the chance to shoot. There are two main reasons. One is that European countries descended upon hearing the news, and ate pots of pulp to welcome the king's teacher. The second is that the invincible British and French allied forces fled too quickly, especially the French army, which followed the British army's Dunkirk retreat and went to Britain to fight against the German army. Subsequently, the German army attacked the Soviet Union, and the guns sounded on the European battlefield. Thus, the first steel war in human history was officially staged. Large-scale air battles, tank battles, etc., all appeared on the Soviet-German battlefield. Because the occupied countries were obedient, the British Army and the French Resistance Organization stood firm in the British Isles, and they would not come out even if they were killed. Therefore, the German army used 2/3 of the total force on the Soviet-German front, and continued to add fuel after that. The sad reminder is that these German troops basically never came back. From June 22, 1941, when the German army blitzed the Soviet Union, to April 16, 1945, when the Soviet army invaded Berlin, the Soviet army wiped out more than 73% of the German army's officers and soldiers, more than 75% of its aircraft, 75% of its tanks and assault troops. Artillery. The specific achievements of the Soviet army are as follows. Eliminate 3.8 million German troops. Captured 1.6 million German troops. Eliminate more than 1 million troops of German slave countries such as Italy, Finland, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. The remaining German troops were wiped out by the British and American coalition forces, various resistance organizations in various countries, and hundreds of thousands of Eastern European troops armed by the Soviet Army. 2. After the British successfully completed the Dunkirk escape, did they launch an operation against the German army? Of course it did. The first is to implement a sea-based fight. The Germans sent the Air Force to bomb the British Isles from time to time, and the British also took advantage of the trend to compete with the German Air Force. Over the years, the British have unremittingly carried out movies of World War II and films against the enemy, such as The Eagle over London, which fully demonstrated the significant contribution of the British Army in World War II. Secondly, the North Africa campaign was launched. Although it failed and failed again with more enemies and fewer, it did not affect the heroic image of the British Army and the invincible mold. After Hollywood-style historical creation, North Africa became the main battlefield of World War II. So, how many German troops are there in North Africa? Here I simply use a certain encyclopedia screenshot. In the beginning, it was a battle between the British and the Germans. The Italian army was at most soy sauce. After the United States entered the war, they also sent people here. The United Kingdom and the United States joined forces to fight the Germans. After nearly 3 years of fighting like this, they finally killed 20,000 people. Many Germans, Britain and the United States also died more than 40,000. In fact, the German army on the North African battlefield usually has no more than 10,000 people, and at its peak it was only 30,000 to 40,000 people. This is the North Africa campaign that Britain and the United States have exaggerated. The most talked about by Britain and the United States is the Normandy landing. This was the biggest battle fought by the British and American armies during World War II, and the only record that can be mentioned. According to an encyclopedia, the 2.87 million troops led by the United Kingdom and the United States fought against the 1.38 million German troops. It took 2.5 months and even entered Paris without firing a single shot. What was the result? 2.87 million people fought with 1.38 million people for 2.5 months, and the result turned out to be: the German army was killed, wounded, missing, and captured, totaling 285,676 people. On the same caliber, the British and American side lost 225,600 people. You know, this was the biggest battle fought by the British and American troops, killing 20,000 German officers and soldiers. This is the Battle of Normandy that Britain, the United States and other countries boast about every day and commemorate every year. In Beidou Encyclopedia, it is also expressed in a Hollywood style. It caused a fundamental change in the strategic situation of the Second World War. The results of Normandy are simply not worth mentioning. In the Soviet-German War, in the Battle of Stalingrad from the summer of 1942 to the beginning of 1943 alone, the Soviet army caused the German army to lose 1.5 million people. It should be noted that during the entire World War II, the British and American troops wiped out a total of only 800,000 German troops. And the Soviet army wiped out 3.8 million German troops. 3. Looking back suddenly, unknowingly, the United States has also become the mainstay in defeating Japan. In 1931, the September 18th incident; in 1937, the July 7th incident. From 1931 to 1940, the United States has been selling all kinds of military and strategic materials to Japan in a big way, making war windfall. During the anti-Japanese war, more than 70% of Japan's army and one-third of its navy were trapped in the Chinese theater. The Japanese army in the Chinese battlefield accounted for more than 90% of its total force at the most, and more than one-third of its total force at the least, with an average of 76% of its total force. From 1931 to 1945, a total of 2.87 million Japanese officers and soldiers died abroad, of which 1.98 million died in the Chinese battlefield. Among them, 22 large-scale battles and more than 200 important battles wiped out more than 1.6 million Japanese troops. 69% of Japanese officers and soldiers who went abroad to fight died in the Chinese battlefield. May I ask, how many Japanese soldiers were killed by the mold? May I ask, what is the mainstay of mold? 4. Roosevelt said at the time, it is difficult to deny the obvious fact that the Russian army has destroyed more enemy soldiers and weapons than the total number of enemy troops destroyed by the other 25 countries in the United Nations. After the fighting on the European battlefield in 1945, a survey conducted by the French polling agency IFOP showed that 57% of French respondents believed that the Soviet Union made the greatest contribution to World War II, while only 20% believed that the United States contributed the most. In 1994, France conducted a public opinion survey on which country do you think played a decisive role in defeating the Nazis in World War II. As a result, 25% believed that the Soviets were the liberators of Europe, and 25% believed that the United States as high as 49% as the victory decider. In 2004, also in France, the number of people who believed that the Soviet Union played a decisive role in the European theater of World War II dropped to 20%. In the Western world, the so-called history is like a Hollywood feature film. Watching too many Hollywood movies, and reading some historical books written by Western experts, people's view of history will be formed. This is the process of the formation of Western pseudo-history, or it can be called the cultural industry chain. The famous American scholar Huntington said, "A slightly more complex version of the argument for pervasive mass culture generally focuses not on consumer goods but on the media, on Hollywood rather than Coca-Cola. America's control over the global film, television, and video industries even exceeds its control over the aircraft industry." In 1993, 88 of the 100 most watched films in the world were American films, and 2 American organizations and 2 European organizations controlled news gathering and news dissemination around the world. The things behind these words should be pondered by the readers themselves. Earlier, we talked about the history of ancient Egypt, the systematic collapse of the pseudo-history of ancient Egypt, and its 20 major chain reactions, the history of ancient Greece, the comprehensive collapse of the pseudo-history of ancient Greece, and its top 10 chain reactions. Today, we talk about the history of ancient Rome. I know that there will be quite a few people who will object, even disdainfully arrogantly. No matter what kind of objection I welcome, of course, what I welcome the most is objection that is well-founded and based on facts. What is most welcome is a well-founded and point-by-point refutation of my article. No matter how hard the ancient Roman history experts try to save it from an academic level, the once rampant ancient Roman history has become a pseudo-history and a joke after dinner. Time problem. 1. Without a calendar, there can be no history. Then, does the Julian calendar of the Roman Empire really exist? According to the current history of ancient Rome, the Julian calendar was introduced by Julius Caesar from the city of Alexandria in Egypt. However, more than 1,000 years ago, the city of Alexandria was still a vast sea, and the Ptolemaic dynasty and all its history, which was the capital of Western history, must have been non-existent. Therefore, the Library of Alexandria, the Observatory of Alexandria, where Ptolemy wrote his works on astronomy and geography, where Euclid wrote elements of geometry, and where Archimedes studied with a teacher, must be non-existent. Of course, the knowledge of astronomy and calendar from here, and the Julian calendar that was born, can only be fiction. One of the chain reactions, the so-called history of the Roman Empire, is bound to be unreliable. As for the so-called records accurate to date in the current Roman history, they are all fabricated products. Capital question. 2. Is the ancient Roman city a city full of tall buildings ahead of all the cities in the world today? The 5th chapter of Greece, Roman Civilization in Global History, written by American scholar Stavridinos and published by Peking University Press, describes the city of Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire. Peking University Press, January 2005, p. 128. Of course, the greatest city of the empire was Rome. It covered 5,000 acres and its population was estimated to be over a million in the 2nd century AD. 5,000 acres is 20 square kilometers. 20 square kilometers, with a population of more than 1 million, that is, 50,000 people per square kilometer. This kind of population density not only far exceeds all cities in China today, but also greatly exceeds the 5 cities in the center of Inner London in the United Kingdom, 940,000 people, 86 square kilometers, and 6 cities including Chiyoda in Tokyo, 1.08 million people, 810,000 people. Square kilometers, Manhattan in New York, 27,627 people / square kilometer. Obviously, the city of Rome described by Western historians is a fantasy city. The dreamy history of Rome and a character and story that happened in the city of Rome, as well as the wide roads, the huge Colosseum, countless baths, beautiful gardens, luxurious palaces, etc., I believe it or not. The second chain reaction, in ancient times 1 or 2,000 years ago, a city of 20 square kilometers could have a population of at most 200,000, that is, no more than 40,000 young and middle-aged men. Then, in the current Roman history, the stories that happened in the city of Rome, all based on the stories of millions of people, can only become the myths of gods fighting like the romance of the gods. Roman historians really don't know how to count. Issues of state building and state governance, navigational issues. 3. According to the current Roman history, Rome first fought against the cavalry and elephant soldiers brought by the Greek fleet, and then sent huge fleets across the Mediterranean Sea countless times, thus conquering the coastal areas of the Mediterranean Sea and becoming a great empire with the Mediterranean Sea as its inland sea. After that, the Roman Empire sent countless governors and troops across the Mediterranean to manage various regions. But the question is, first, what kind of warships should ancient Greece have in order to transport large numbers of war horses and elephants? Could it be that ancient Greece already had an aircraft carrier? Second, and crucially, did ancient Greece and Rome have navigation means sufficient for long-distance navigation? Of course not. So how did they manage to fight and rule across seas? In fact, it was not until after the 14th century that the West obtained the application technology of the compass that it had the ability to navigate across the Mediterranean Sea. The third chain reaction, the history of the founding and governance of the Roman Empire is all a history of lies above castles in the air. Food, material food, issues. For according to the current Roman history, Egypt is the granary of the Roman Empire, including the food of millions of people in Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire, almost entirely dependent on the food shipped from Egypt. Based on the above 3 points, it can be seen that not to mention that the Nile Delta was very small and the food production was extremely low 1 or 2,000 years ago, even if there was food in Egypt, it could not be transported to Rome. The fourth chain reaction, the Roman Empire had no food to eat, Roman citizens, free bread, Roman legions, etc., can only become a mythical history of heavenly soldiers and generals. Science and technology culture, spiritual food, issues. 5. According to the current Roman history, Alexandria in Egypt is the technological and cultural capital of the Roman Empire. Almost all of the scientific and technological talents and scientific and technological achievements of the Roman Empire came from Alexandria. Based on the above 3 points in 1.2.3, it can be seen that, not to mention that the city of Alexandria was still a vast sea 1 or 2,000 years ago, even if the city of Alexandria did exist, it would not be able to cross the sea and conduct normal technological and cultural exchanges with the city of Rome. The fifth chain reaction, the Roman Empire had no spiritual food to eat, and all scientific and cultural activities in Rome and their achievements, including of course the so-called Julian calendar, can only become a history of lies. Currency issue. 6. Did the Roman Empire have a currency? According to the current ancient Roman history and archaeological discoveries, it does not seem to be a problem. However, after thinking about it for a while, I found that it was wrong. For example, after a passage in General History of the World by American scholar Stavridis published by Peking University Press, it is very interesting. Excessive spending, by the Roman imperial government, led to inflation that was eventually uncontrollable. In Egypt, for example, a unit of measurement of wheat cost 6 drachmas in the 1st century AD, rising to 200 drachmas in AD 276. Lachma rose to 9,000 drachma in 314, 78,000 drachma in 334, and more than 2 million drachmas shortly after 334. In the face of such inflation, the currency became useless. Worthless. In Egypt, the granary of the Roman Empire, the food price shortly after 334, compared with the 1st century AD, increased by 330,000 times. If so, we might as well deduce. Assume that a copper coin in ancient Rome weighs the same as a 5-baht coin in China. 1 baht is about 0.6 grams, and a 5-baht coin weighs 3 grams. Assume that in the 1st century, a bucket of wheat was worth 6 copper coins. Then, after 334 years, more than 2 million copper coins are needed to buy a bucket of wheat. Then, the weight of copper coins held by people is 3 grams x 2 million 6 million grams 6000 kg. The people of the Roman Empire had to pull 6 tons of copper coins to buy back a bucket of rice. Even if it is exchanged for silver to sell grain, A caddy of silver cannot be exchanged for a caddy of rice. Chain reaction 6. Did the Roman Empire have currency? Either the Roman Empire had no currency, or Roman historians simply couldn't count. Population problems. 7. How many people did the Roman Empire have? According to the History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire written by the British Gibbon, the Roman Empire covers an area of at least 1.6 million square miles, or more than 4.14 million square kilometers, with a population of 120 million. The area of Europe is 10.16 million square kilometers, 2.45 times that of the Roman Empire. However, the total population of the Roman Empire exceeded the population of the whole of Europe in the 1860s and 1870s. Believe it or not, the large population of ancient Rome is also jaw-dropping for today's ancient Roman historians, such as Stavridenosa's Global History. The Romans, in the homeland, lost even more heavily, but they had 750,000 Italian combatants in their backup. So, Pyrrhus retreated in 272 BC. When Rome was founded, wars were fought every day, and after countless deaths, Rome had 750,000 reserve soldiers in addition to Roman citizens. At this time, Rome only owned less than half of the territory of Italy today. Based on 2/3 of the young and middle-aged men being the source of soldiers, and each young and middle-aged man having a family of 5, Rome at this time had a population of at least 7 million. Including slaves, the population of Rome should be 10 million. In this way, Italy more than 2,000 years ago had a population of more than 20 million. Chain reaction 7. The Roman historians are not only illiterate, but also a group of special people who why not eat minced meat. Archaeological issues. 8. What archaeological discoveries have been made about ancient Rome? I don't know what Western archaeologists dug up in the past. I only know something that happened in the past 2 years. Give 2 examples. First example. According to reports, on January 1, 2022 local time, in Rome, Italy, the press office of the Italian Ministry of Culture released photos showing that 3 tombs were unearthed on Via Latina during the water network replacement project in the Appio Latin district. They belong to the same funeral group and can be traced back between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD. In this regard, some Chinese netizens exclaimed, "Fuck, the Italians are awesome." Between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD, there were electric wires and iron drainage pipes. Another netizen said, when the water pipe was buried, it was buried together. Some netizens said, friends in Guangzhou can go to Beijing Road to see how the ruins are layered. The remains of the Tang dynasty more than 1,000 years ago are 3.5 meters deep from the surface. The ancient Roman ruins more than 2,000 years ago are only 1 floor away from the surface of the concrete road. Whoever believes in Shabai. Second example. Pompeii can be described as famous. In recent years, the unearthed cultural relics here have been sent to the domestic tour exhibition many times. It is said that Mount Vesuvius erupted in AD 79, and the raging volcanic ash and lava flooded the bustling city of Pompeii. Since 1876, the Italian government has continuously organized excavations, and a large number of cultural relics have been unearthed in recent years. Most amazingly, a large number of murals were unearthed in Pompeii. Not only the quantity is large, but also clear, complete, and beautiful in color. In 2018 alone, archaeologists discovered a large number of well-preserved murals at the ruins of Pompeii. These frescoes were found like this. The magma at 1000 degrees Celsius is enough to destroy all life in the world, and make most of the substances either melt or gasify. However, such powerful magma can only do nothing to the murals in Pompeii. The countless frescoes in Pompeii have withstood 3 major tests at the same time, and they are still fresh and intact. First, 1000 degrees Celsius high temperature. Second, the high pressure of 6 meters thick and tons of volcanic ash. Third, the high friction of countless gravels that suddenly fall from the sky. Western archaeologists have created a world mystery for human society. What kind of special pigments are used to make the murals of Pompeii? Chain reaction 8. Do Western archaeologists have a minimum credibility? Do they have a minimum of professional ethics? Is their archaeological business level and achievements worth taking seriously? Media issues. 9. What is the history of Rome and its related documents written on papyrus or parchment? If the Roman Empire mainly used parchment, assuming that 1% of the population of the Roman Empire was literate, 1.2 million, and each person used 6 sheets of parchment per year, 1 sheet every 2 months, then the Roman Empire would have to eliminate at least 6 million people per year. Lamb. Taking a 10,000 step back assumption, if the Roman Empire had only 1/1,000 educated people, and the per capita consumption of 1 lambskin per month, then 1.2 million lambs would have to be killed every year, and the sheep of the Roman Empire would be wiped out in at most 2 years cleanup. This does not take into account the transmission and use of the all-pervasive Roman law. As for the papyrus, there is nothing left. Sedges grow on both sides of the Nile River or in swampy areas. However, more than 2,000 years ago, the area of the Nile Delta was at most 30% of today's, and the area of the Nile Delta was only half of today's. Until today, the Nile Delta is only 24,000 square kilometers. If all the Nile Delta was used to grow sedge, would it be possible to meet the papyrus demand of the Roman Empire? The more important question is that the palm-sized Nile Delta also served as the food base of Rome, the technology and culture base of the Roman Empire, and the papyrus supply base of the Roman Empire. Can any expert tell me, these 3 bases are how many square kilometers does it cover? Did the imperial edicts use parchment or papyrus? Even if enough papyrus could be produced in the Nile Delta, how could the papyrus be transported to Rome with the transportation capacity and navigation means at that time? In a word, from ancient Greece to ancient Rome, papyrus, and so on are pure sleepwalking. The 10th chain reaction, Chinese people often don't care about paper and wooden bamboo slips, so they lack the basic awe of our ancestors. As everyone knows, for foreigners, even wooden and bamboo slips are a big problem. In other words, the ancestors of foreigners didn't even have this kind of creativity. I would like to ask, what are the documents of ancient Rome, and of course the documents of ancient Greece? A popular question, from Socrates to ancient Rome, where did the literati and officials write their works? They should not be written on their laps, right? Who can tell me, through what medium was the document of ancient Greece and Rome handed down, so that the Renaissance appeared? Big question, what is the truth about the so-called Renaissance? In a nutshell, the Renaissance, for real? Inconsistency with Chinese historical records. 10. Based on the above points, the ancient Roman Empire is pure fiction. In fact, since the Han Dynasty, the footsteps of Chinese envoys have traveled all over the mountains and rivers of West Asia. However, the Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Empire have never appeared in Chinese history books since the historical records. According to Chinese history books, the Roman Empire spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa is just a fantasy empire. It can be seen that Chinese history books are reliable. Chain reaction 10th. History that cannot stand the test of Chinese history books is all false history.